Curiosity crawls across the snowbound morning like a quiet animal, nudging Silas McKenna out of his cabin before the sun has fully risen. The wind is thin, brittle with cold, carrying a sound he cannot yet name, something between a whimper and the sigh of shifting ice. He pauses on the ridge, his breath hanging pale in the air, and listens. Years of living alone in the Wyoming highlands have sharpened his senses. He knows the language of storms, the tone of wounded creatures, the silence of danger. But this sound is different. It tugs at him, not with urgency but with a strange, soft insistence that makes him step off the trail he usually follows. The snow deepens as he descends the slope, brushing against his worn coat. His boots crack the crusted surface, each step deliberate, guided more by instinct than intention. A raven circles overhead, its black wings slicing across the washed-out sky. Ravens don't waste their energy without reason. Silas follows its spiraling path until the shape in the snow comes into view. Frail, unmoving, barely distinguishable from the pale drifts that seem ready to swallow it whole. He approaches slowly, almost reverently, afraid that haste might shatter whatever fragile life might remain. Kneeling beside the figure, he sees a woman, young but worn in ways that speak of long hardship. Frost clings to the ends of her lashes, her lips cracked with cold. A strand of dark hair lies frozen across her cheek like a final plea. Pinned to the front of her cloak is a scrap of paper, stiff with ice. He peels it free and reads the two words scrawled in hurried anger, "Not wanted." The blunt cruelty of it punches something deep in his chest. Silas has known loneliness, but not this kind of deliberate severing. Whoever left her here meant for the world to forget she ever existed. He looks at her again, studies the shallow rise of her breath, the trembling at her fingertips, and feels an old ache surface, an ache he thought he had buried along with the parts of his past he never speaks about. He slips his arms beneath her with a gentleness at odds with his rugged, mountain-built body. She is lighter than he expects, as if the cold has stolen weight along with warmth. He holds her close, wrapping his heavy buffalo hide around her, and begins the steady climb back to his cabin. Her head rests against his shoulder, and though she does not speak, he senses a faint will inside her, a quiet refusal to surrender fully to the cold. Inside the cabin, the fire snaps to life with urgency as Silas feeds it until the room glows amber. He lays the woman near the hearth, removing her wet boots and cloak, working with careful, respectful hands. Steam lifts from her thawing clothing, drifting upward like small ghosts escaping. She stirs, eyelids fluttering, then opens her eyes just wide enough to see a shadowed figure leaning over her, large, bearded, silent. Her breath hitches, fear rising like a tide. Silas, sensing it, steps back but not away. "You're safe," he says, his voice low, warmed by the crackling fire. He doesn't expect her to trust him. Trust is not given easily by those who have been discarded. Still, he hopes the tone, not the words, reaches her. She swallows, her voice brittle as the icicles outside. Why did you help me?" He meets her gaze without flinching. "Because you were alive." It's the truth, and it's all he has to offer. She closes her eyes, a soft tremor running through her, as if she is deciding whether to believe him or let fear rule her again. He turns away to brew willow bark tea, giving her space, letting her breathe without feeling watched. Silence fills the cabin, but it is not the heavy, suffocating kind, rather the type that grows between strangers who both carry unseen stories. When he returns with the steaming cup, she lifts her hand weakly. He guides it to her, letting her maintain what little independence she can cling to. She sips slowly, and warmth begins to color her cheeks, faint but present. After a moment, she whispers, "My name is Clara." Her voice cracks around the syllables as though they haven't been spoken in a long time. Silas nods. "Clara." He repeats it quietly, not testing the name but honoring it. She glances at the folded note on the table. "You saw it." "I did." He doesn't look away, doesn't soften the truth with polite evasion. "But I don't take it as gospel." A brief flicker crosses her face, surprise, confusion, maybe even fragile gratitude. She pulls the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Someone wanted me gone." The way she says it holds no anger, only a sorrow sharpened by resignation. Silas doesn't push for details. He has learned that people tell their stories when they choose to, not when asked. Instead, he kneels by the fire and adds another log, letting its glow reach her. "Rest," he says. "Storm will get worse before nightfall." Clara studies him, trying to measure the intentions of a man who could carry her from death yet speak so little. His stillness unsettles her, but not in the way danger does. It is more like a silence that holds the possibility of safety, something she hasn't known in years. As the wind rises outside, rattling the shutters, Clara senses a shift inside herself. She is still cold, still exhausted, still unsure of the world she has woken into. But she is no longer alone in it. Silas moves around the cabin with steady purpose, gathering supplies, checking the fire, always close enough to help yet far enough not to frighten. For the first time since she was abandoned, Clara feels something unfamiliar pressing at the edges of her fear. Not hope, not yet, but the faintest curiosity about the man who, without asking anything in return, chose not to let her die. And that small curiosity becomes the fragile thread pulling her back into life. Clara wakes in the faint silver of dawn, disoriented but warmer than she has been in months. For a moment she lies still, listening to the quiet rise and fall of Silas's movements as he tends the fire. The rhythm of his presence feels strangely grounding, unobtrusive yet unmistakably protective. She sits up slowly, adjusting the blanket around her shoulders, letting the warmth from the crackling flames seep into her bones. The room smells faintly of pine resin and brewed herbs, a combination that steadies her nerves more than any comforting words might have. Silas glances over his shoulder when he hears her stir. His expression is unreadable but attentive, a look shaped by solitude rather than indifference. Clara feels the urge to speak, but words are difficult this early in the day, especially when her mind still echoes with memories she wishes she could abandon as easily as that cruel note left pinned to her cloak. Silas hands her a cup of fresh tea before she can find her voice. His fingers brush hers briefly, not intentionally, not boldly, but with a kind of accidental tenderness that makes her chest tighten. "Storm eased," he says, taking a seat opposite her. "We have a few calm hours." His voice is steady, but Clara senses an undertone she can't decipher. She studies him, broad shoulders under a worn shirt, hair slightly tousled, eyes the color of weathered earth. He looks like a man sculpted by the mountains themselves, and yet something gentle lingers in the way he holds himself around her. She wonders what his life was before solitude became his only companion. The question rises and falls inside her like a cautious tide. "What happens now?" she finally asks, her voice fragile but curious. It is the first time she allows herself to consider a future beyond this cabin, beyond the humiliation of that note, beyond the hands that pushed her into despair. Silas looks at her for a long moment. "Now, you heal. And when you're ready, you choose your path." The simplicity of his answer strikes her deeper than any promise could. No demands. No conditions. No claim. Just choice, something she has rarely been granted. Clara sets the cup aside and wraps her hands around her knees. "I don't know what path I have." "You will," Silas replies, and the quiet certainty in his voice settles into her like a warm stone. The hours that follow unfold with a gentle rhythm. Silas shows her how to move around the cabin without straining her half-frozen limbs. He teaches her how to grind dried herbs, how to mend torn seams with steady stitches, how to read the faint marks that the wind leaves in the snow. These lessons are not tasks. They are small invitations to re-enter the world. Clara realizes he gives her these moments because he understands what it means to rebuild from the inside out. As days pass, Clara's strength returns. Her steps are still cautious, but each one feels like a reclaiming of breath. She begins to look outside more often, drawn to the sweeping view of the valley. The snow glitters like shattered glass, yet no longer feels like a threat. It is simply part of the land, and she is learning how to exist alongside it. Silas notices the changes quietly. He does not praise her. He simply acknowledges her progress through slight nods or a softening in his gaze. This silent recognition is far more powerful to Clara than spoken encouragement. She senses that he too is changing, though he never admits it. His steps linger near her. His glances stretch a heartbeat longer, and sometimes the corner of his mouth tilts upward when she makes a small joke by the fire. These minor shifts are delicate bridges between them. Fragile, yes, but real. One evening, as the sun sinks behind the distant peaks, Clara steps outside with Silas following at a respectful distance. The sky is painted in strokes of violet and gold. She draws in a breath, the cold air filling her lungs without burning this time. "I used to think the world was made only of sharp corners," she says, not turning toward him. "Places where you get hurt if you're not careful." Silas stands beside her silently, his presence steady as the mountains. "But this place," she continues, "it feels like a soft edge. Like something that doesn't demand anything of me." "It's the land," Silas replies quietly. "It holds what we can't." Clara looks at him, her heart pulling in a direction she's afraid to name. "And you? What do you hold?" Silas exhales, the question settling into him with unexpected weight. "Less than I used to. But maybe something new." The admission is barely above a whisper, yet it feels monumental. Clara's eyes soften. She steps a little closer, not touching him, but breaking the distance they've kept. It is a gesture of trust, unforced, earned through patience. Over the next days, their connection deepens, not through sweeping declarations but through shared silences, exchanged glances, and quiet acts of care. Silas fixes her boots with careful hands. Clara warms his gloves by the fire when he returns from chopping wood. They work side by side in a silent companionship that grows roots deeper than either of them expected. As winter begins to loosen its grip, Clara feels a calm certainty settle inside her. She belongs, not because someone claimed her, but because she has chosen to stay. She finds Silas on the ridge one evening, watching the valley with an expression almost reverent. "Silas," she says softly. He turns, and she sees something luminous in his eyes, a mix of wonder and fear, as if he senses the moment shifting around them. "I'm not leaving," she says. "Not because I owe you anything, but because this is the first place that feels like I'm wanted." Silas's breath catches, a subtle tremor passing through him. He steps closer, still cautious, still the man who lets silence speak first. "Then stay," he murmurs. "Stay because you want to." Clara reaches for his hand, threading her fingers with his. This simple touch holds everything they have built: gentleness, patience, reclaimed dignity, and the quiet bloom of something that might one day be called love. The snow melts slowly around them, revealing the first green hints of spring. And in that soft, thawing world, they stand together, two souls once weathered by loneliness, now warmed by a future neither dared imagine. It is not dramatic. It is not grand. It is simply right. And that is the happiest ending either of them ever needed.